Side news about the region. Pakistan's Mohenjo-Daro damaged by heavy rain. Friday, September 9, 2022. Islamabad, Pakistan. Al Jazeera reports that 55 inches of rain in southeastern Pakistan have caused significant damage to Mohenjo-Daro, a 4,500-year-old city of the Indus Valley Civilization that was discovered in 1922 and named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1980. The original structure is safe by and large, including the stupa at the site, said Abdul Fattah Sheikh, Director of Archaeology and Museums for Sindh Province. However, the protective layer, also called mud slurry, that we deployed suffered a lot of damage, causing exposure of the original walls. The ancient city's drainage and water management systems helped to protect the site from accumulating standing water, he added. Conservation work has begun to protect the ancient structures.
As in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Indus or Harappan civilization arose along important rivers. The Indus society rose at roughly the same time as Mesopotamia and came to its height between 2600 and 2500 BC. Today, the Indus River Basin covers southeast Pakistan along the frontier with India. The rivers of this area provided basic transport and water for people and enabled the local agriculture. Wheat, barley, and rice were grown, as was cotton for textiles. Animal bones found in the ruins are evidence that cattle and chickens were raised. Archaeologists have unearthed granaries, simple homes, baths, and even citadels or forts in the Indus communities. Many buildings were made of brick, which was either sun-baked or fired in an oven to make it harder. The Indus Valley people used copper and bronze to create tools and weapons. They also had their own form of written language, weights, and measures. Most of their language has not been decrypted, however. Their written legacy remains a puzzle to be solved. Important settlements grew in the Indus Valley. The two largest were Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. Each of these cities may have been home to 35,000 people, an impressive population for the time. Remains of goods from Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley have been found in both civilizations. Therefore, trade was active between them.
Introduction. Mohenjo-Daro, group of mounds and ruins meaning Mound of the Dead, on the right bank of the Indus River, northern Sindh Province, southern Pakistan. It lies on the flat alluvial plain of the Indus, about 50 miles, 80 km southwest of Sukur. The site contains the remnants of one of two main centers of the ancient Indus civilization, c. 2500–1700 BCE, the other one being Harappa, some 400 miles, 640 km to the northwest in Pakistan's Punjab province.
Mesopotamia was an ancient land that reached across what is now Iraq to what are now eastern Syria and southeastern Turkey. But the name itself comes from Greek, meaning between rivers. Mesopotamia is often considered the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The word Mesopotamia refers to this region and the early societies within it. More than 5,000 years ago, people in Mesopotamia developed what is thought to have been the world's first writing system. They pushed styluses, specially pointed sticks, into soft clay tablets, leaving marks in the clay as symbols. When the clay hardened, it became a permanent record. Some clay tablets have survived to this day. They hold clues to the lives of these people. Mesopotamia is part of the Fertile Crescent, an arc of land through the Middle East connecting with Egypt in the west. The cultures of Mesopotamia are considered civilizations because their people had writing, had settled communities in the form of villages, planted their own food, had domesticated animals, and had different orders of workers. Compared with the lives of most people at that time, civilization in Mesopotamia was sophisticated and unusual. The shift from hunting and gathering to civilization allowed Mesopotamians to diversify. Farmers in Mesopotamia grew more than their personal needs. Their surplus food allowed others to specialize in new duties. Some made tools, some built homes or cooked food. some became priests or leaders. Still, more people worked for the leaders, keeping written records of laws, labor, and goods for trade. The use of law in Mesopotamia is important, as it set an example for civilizations to come. Hammurabi, a Babylonian king who lived in Mesopotamia 38 centuries ago, is still famous today for his laws. The contributions of Babylonian mathematicians and astronomers also live on. The age of great Mesopotamian civilizations came to an end in the early 4th century BC, when Alexander the Great conquered Babylon and took the lands around it for his Greek Empire. History's chapter on Mesopotamia closed as it opened on life in a new Middle East, connecting Europe and Africa with Asia.
Is one of the most significant archaeological sites in South Asia, providing a window into the mysterious world of the Indus Valley Civilization, flourishing around 2600 to 1900 BC. This ancient civilization predates both Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, showcasing advanced urban planning, sophisticated engineering, and a complex social structure. As we delve into the remnants of Mohenjo-Daro, the city offers tantalizing clues about the daily life, trade, and governance of a civilization lost in the mists of time.
For more than 4 millennia, agricultural and pastoral communities in what is now Pakistan and Western India traded with one another and shared ritual practices and customs. In time, a vast civilization emerged with large, well-planned cities and a common writing system, mythology, and iconography. Flourishing between 2600 and 1900 BC, it encompassed more than 250,000 square miles of land, twice the area inhabited by contemporaneous Sumerian and Egyptian cultures. How this happened over so large a region is a question archaeologists are answering at sites such as Harappa, Mehrgarh, Mohenjo-Daro, and Nowshera in Pakistan, and Dholavira in India. At its height, the Indus Civilization, named for the river that enriched the area's farm and grazing lands, the city was strategically located along the banks of the Indus River, providing access to water and fertile land for agriculture. The layout of Mohenjo-Daro suggests a well-planned urban center with a grid-like street system, advanced drainage system, and multi-story buildings. The evidence suggests that Mohenjo-Daro suffered more than once from devastating floods of abnormal depth and duration, owing not merely to the encroaching Indus, but possibly also a ponding back of the Indus drainage by tectonic uplifts between Mohenjo-Daro and the sea. That evidence has led to speculation that Harappa may have succeeded, or at least outlasted, Mohenjo-Daro. Extended from the lapis mines in mountainous northern Afghanistan to the coast of the Arabian Sea, from the highland pastures of Baluchistan to the mineral-rich deserts of Cholistan and Thar. Its core area was the vast alluvial plain of the Indus and now dry Ghaggar-Hakra rivers, but numerous settlements were also established in peripheral regions of Saurashtra, Gujarat, and the upper Ganga-Yamuna river valley. The rivers, plains, and nearby mountains offered abundant wild animals, fish, and timber, and raw materials such as steatite, talc, and copper. Although there is ample evidence for walled towns and cities, there is no indication so far that military force was used by one settlement to conquer another. Recent discoveries at Harappa and elsewhere suggest that trade, social and political alliances, and common religious beliefs linked these communities. Though the Indus script remains undeciphered, study of artifacts has fostered a better understanding of how the society came into being, how it flourished, and why it eventually collapsed. Mohenjo-Daro is an archaeological site in Larkana district, Sindh, Pakistan. Built around 2500 BCE, it was the largest settlement of the ancient Indus Valley Civilization and one of the world's earliest major cities, contemporaneous with the civilizations of ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Minoan Crete, and Norte Chico, from which it seems to have been protected, in antiquity as today, by artificial barriers, was laid out with remarkable regularity into something like a dozen blocks, or islands, each about 1,260 feet, 384 meters, from north to south, and 750 feet, 228 meters, from east to west, subdivided by straight or dog-legged lanes. The central block on the western side was built up artificially to a dominating height of 20 to 40 feet, 6 to 12 meters, with mud and mud brick, and was fortified to an unascertained extent by square towers of baked brick. Buildings on the high summit included an elaborate bath or tank surrounded by a veranda, a large residential structure, a massive granary, and at least 2 aisled halls of assembly. It is clear that the citadel, for such it evidently was, carried the religious and ceremonial headquarters of the site. In the lower town were substantial courtyard houses indicating a considerable middle class. Most houses had small bathrooms and, like the streets, were well provided with drains and sanitation. Brick stairs indicate at least an upper story or a flat habitable roof. The walls were originally plastered with mud, no doubt to reduce the deleterious effect of the salts that are contained by the bricks and react destructively to varying heat and humidity. With an estimated population of at least 40,000 people, Mohenjo-Daro prospered for several centuries, but by around 1700 BCE had been abandoned, along with other large cities of the Indus Valley Civilization. The site was not rediscovered until the 1920s. Significant excavation has since been conducted at the site of the city, which was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1980, the first site in South Asia to be so designated. The site is currently threatened by erosion and improper restoration. That ancient 5,000-year-old city constitutes the largest of Indus Valley, widely recognized as one of the most important early cities of South Asia and the Indus Valley Civilization. Mohenjo-Daro, one of the world's first cities and contemporaneous with ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations, has been sometimes referred to as an ancient Indus Valley metropolis. The discovery of Mohenjo-Daro led to tremendous excitement in the archaeological and historical worlds. Although the beginning of the Indus Valley Civilization predated the founding of Mohenjo-Daro, and thousands of villages and towns had been discovered throughout the region occupied by the Indus Valley people, Mohenjo-Daro represented the largest, most sophisticated city discovered. As work with the archaeological dig progressed, archaeologists believed that they had discovered the key city in the civilization, existing during the flowering of the Indus Valley Civilization from 2600 BCE to 1700 BCE. Keys to the foundation of the world's religions that appeared in the region, including Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, as well as the nations and empires that appeared later, lay within the unearthed city, and encompasses a fascinating timeline of one of the world's earliest urban settlements. Located in what is now modern-day Pakistan, Mohenjo-Daro flourished as a sophisticated city during the Bronze Age. Its impressive urban planning, advanced sanitation systems, and intricate architecture make it a testament to the ingenuity of its inhabitants. The civilization thrived for several centuries, with its people engaging in trade, agriculture, and crafts. However, around 1900 BCE, the city was mysteriously abandoned, leaving behind a treasure trove of artifacts and a wealth of knowledge about this ancient civilization. Today, Mohenjo-Daro stands as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, providing valuable insights into the social, economic, and cultural aspects of this remarkable civilization. The Indus Enigma. Undeciphered ancient texts are archaeology at its most mysterious and romantic, but the Indus is more than a maddening intellectual puzzle. Knowing the nature of the script and understanding its signs will change our view of the earliest civilizations, but it is also a matter of modern identity. Many South Asians, from rickshaw drivers to politicians, have pet theories, and a source of equal measures of academic frustration, nationalistic fervor, and raw emotion. The last decade has seen cooperation among scholars, as well as new theories and discoveries. But it has also seen accusations of racism and scientific bias, name-calling, and even threats. Etymology. The city's original name is unknown. Based on his analysis of a Mohenjo-Daro seal, Iravatham Mahadevan speculates that the city's ancient name could have been Kukutarma. Cockfighting may have had ritual and religious significance for the city. Mohenjo-Daro may also have been a point of diffusion for the clade of the domesticated chicken found in Africa, Western Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Mohenjo-Daro, the modern name for the site, has been interpreted as Mound of the Dead in Sindhi. The world in between, 5,000 years ago, a long-buried society in the Iranian desert helped the peripatetic English explorer Sir Aurel Stein, famous for his archaeological work surveying large swaths of Central Asia and the Middle East, slipped into Persia at the end of 1915 and found the first hints of eastern Iran's lost cities. Stein traversed what he described as a big stretch of gravel and sandy desert and encountered the usual robber bands from across the Afghan border without any exciting incident. What did excite Stein was the discovery of what he called the most surprising prehistoric site on the eastern edge of the Dasht-e-Lut. Locals called it Shahri Sokta, burnt city, because of signs of ancient destruction. It wasn't until a half-century later that Tosi and his team hacked their way through the thick salt crust and discovered a metropolis rivaling those of the first great urban centers in Mesopotamia and the Indus. Radiocarbon data showed that the site was founded around 3200 BC, just as the first substantial cities in Mesopotamia were being built, and flourished for more than 1,000 years. During its heyday in the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, the city covered more than 150 hectares and may have been home to more than 20,000 people, perhaps as populous as the large cities of Umma in Mesopotamia and Mohenjo-Daro on the Indus River. A vast, shallow lake and wells likely provided the necessary water, allowing for cultivated fields and grazing for animals. Built of mud brick, the city boasted a large palace, separate neighborhoods for pottery making, metalworking, and other industrial activities, and distinct areas for the production of local goods. Most residents lived in modest one-room houses, though some were larger compounds with 6 to 8 rooms. Bags of goods and storerooms were often locked with stamp seals, a procedure common in Mesopotamia in the era. Historical context. It was one of the largest cities of the ancient Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, which developed around 3000 BCE from the prehistoric Indus culture. At its height, the Indus civilization spanned much of what is now Pakistan and North India, extending westwards to the Iranian border, south to Gujarat in India, and northwards to an outpost in Bactria, with major urban centers at Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Lothal, Kalibangan, Dholavira, and Rakhigarhi. Mohenjo-Daro was the most advanced city of its time, with remarkably sophisticated civil engineering and urban planning. When the Indus civilization went into sudden decline around 1900 BCE, Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned. Rediscovery and excavation. The ruins of the city remained undocumented for around 3,700 years until R.D. Banerjee, an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India, visited the site in 1919-20, identifying what he thought to be a Buddhist stupa, 150-500 CE, known to be there and finding a flint scraper which convinced him of the site's antiquity. This led to large-scale excavations of Mohenjo-Daro led by K. N. Dikshit in 1924-25 and John Marshall in 1925-26. In the 1930s, major excavations were conducted at the site under the leadership of Marshal D.K. Dikshitar and Ernest Mackay. Further excavations were carried out in 1945 by Mortimer Wheeler and his trainee, Ahmad Hassan Dani. The last major series of excavations were conducted in 1964 and 1965 by George F. Dales. After 1965, excavations were banned due to weathering damage to the exposed structures, and the only projects allowed at the site since have been salvage excavations, surface surveys, and conservation projects. In the 1980s, German and Italian survey groups led by Michael Jansen and Maurizio Tosi used less invasive archaeological techniques, such as architectural documentation, surface surveys, and localized probing to gather further information about Mohenjo-Daro. A dry core drilling conducted in 2015 by Pakistan's National Fund for Mohenjo-Daro revealed that the site is larger than the unearthed area. The Indus Valley Civilization had been one of the most ancient civilizations on the banks of Indus River. The Indus culture blossomed over the centuries and gave rise to the Indus Valley Civilization around 3000 BCE. The civilization spanned much of Pakistan, but suddenly went into decline around 1800 BCE. Indus civilization settlements spread as far south as the Arabian Sea coast of India, as far west as the Iranian border, and as far north as the Himalayas. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, as well as Lothal, numbered among the settlements the major urban centers. The Mohenjo-Daro ruins had been once the center of this ancient society. At its peak, some archaeologists opine that the Indus civilization may have had a population of well over 5 million. To date, over 1,000 cities and settlements have been found, mainly in the Indus River Valley in Pakistan and northwestern India. Anthropologists have yet to decipher the language of the Indus civilization and the real name of the city as of other excavated cities in Sindh Province, Pakistan. The area of present-day Sindh Province was the center of the ancient Indus Valley Civilization, as represented by the sites of Mohenjo-Daro, Amre, and Kot Diji. This early civilization existed from about 2300 to 1750 BCE. There is then a gap of more than a millennium before the historical record is renewed, with Sindh's annexation to the Persian Achaemenid Empire under Darius I in the late 6th century BCE. Nearly 2 centuries later, Alexander the Great conquered the region in 326 and 325 BCE. After his death, Sindh came under the domination of the empires of Seleucus III Nikator, Chandragupta Maurya, c. 305 BCE, the Indo-Greeks and Parthians in the 3rd-2nd century BCE, and the Scythians and the Kushans from about 100 BCE to 200 CE. Sindh's population adopted Buddhism under the Kushan rulers in the 1st century CE. From the 3rd to the 7th century CE, the area remained under the rule of the Persian Sassanids. The Arab conquest of Sindh in 711 heralded the entry of Islam into the Indian subcontinent. Sindh was part of the administrative province of Al-Sindh in the Umayyad and Abbasid empires from 712 to about 900, with its capital at Al-Mansura, 45 miles, 72 kilometers, north of present-day Hyderabad. With the eventual weakening of central authority in the Caliphate, the Arab governors of Al-Sindh established their own dynastic rule of the region from the 10th to the 16th century. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Sindh was ruled by the Mughals, 1591 to 1700, and then by several independent Sindhian dynasties, the last of which lost the region to the British in 1843. At that time, most of Sindh was annexed to the Bombay Presidency. In 1937, Sindh was established as a separate province in British India, but after Pakistani independence, it was integrated into the province of West Pakistan from 1955 to 1970, at which time it was re-established as a separate province. Great Bath, Ancient Bath, Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan Great Bath, Ancient structure at Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan, an archaeological site featuring ruins of the Indus Civilization. The Great Bath dates to the 3rd millennium BCE and is believed to have been used for ritual bathing. The Great Bath is part of a large citadel complex. An iconic structure within the citadel is a large water tank built with finely crafted bricks, featuring a series of steps leading into the water. While its exact purpose remains a subject of debate among scholars, it is widely believed to have had ritualistic and religious significance that was found in the 1920s during excavations of Mohenjo-Daro, one of the main centers of the Indus civilization. The bath is built of fine brickwork and measures 897 square feet, 83 square meters. It is 8 feet, 2.5 meters lower than the surrounding pavement. The floor consists of 2 skins of sawed bricks set on edge in gypsum mortar, with a layer of bitumen sealer sandwiched between the skins. Water was evidently supplied by a large well in an adjacent room, and an outlet in one corner of the bath led to a high corbelled drain that disgorged on the west side of the mound. The bath was reached by flights of steps at either end, originally finished with timbered treads set in bitumen. From a colonnaded courtyard, steps lead down to the brick-built pool, which was waterproofed by a lining of bitumen. The pool measures 12 meters, 39 ft long, 7 meters, 23 ft wide, and 2.4 meters, 7.9 ft deep. It may have been used for religious purification. Other large buildings include a pillared hall, thought to be an assembly hall of some kind, and the so-called College Hall, a complex of buildings comprising 78 rooms, thought to have been a priestly residence. The significance of the structure is unknown, but it is generally thought to be linked with some sort of ritual bathing. Indeed, while lacking impressive palaces or monuments, Mohenjo-Daro featured numerous baths. Most homes had washrooms and an extensive sewage system, suggesting that a priority was placed on cleanliness and sanitation. Architecture and urban infrastructure. Mohenjo-Daro has a planned layout with rectilinear buildings arranged on a grid plan. Most were built of fired and mortared brick. Some incorporated sun-dried mud brick and wooden superstructures. The covered area of Mohenjo-Daro is estimated at 300 hectares. The Oxford Handbook of Cities in World History offers a weak estimate of a peak population of around 40,000. The Great Granary at Mohenjo-Daro, designed with bays, received carts delivering crops from the countryside. Ducts exist for air to circulate beneath the stored grain to dry it. Close to the granary, a building similarly civic in nature stands, a great public bath, with steps down to a brick-lined pool in a colonnaded courtyard. The elaborate bath area had been extremely well built, with a layer of natural tar to keep it from leaking, and in the center stood the pool, measuring 12 x 7 ml, with a depth of 2.4 z's. The pool had been likely used for religious or spiritual ceremonies. The sheer size of the city and its provision of public buildings and facilities suggests a high level of social organization. The city is divided into 2 parts, the so-called citadel and the lower city. The citadel, situated on a raised platform, likely housed the ruling elite. The citadel, a mud brick mound around 12 meters, 39 ft high, is known to have supported public baths, a large residential structure designed to house about 5,000 citizens, and 2 large assembly halls. The city had a central marketplace, with a large central well and workshops. The city streets were laid out in a grid pattern, a testament to the meticulous planning and organizational skills of the ancient inhabitants, and showcasing a uniformity that suggests a centralized authority or urban planning committee. Individual households or groups of households obtained their water from smaller wells. Wastewater was channeled to covered drains that lined the major streets. The houses had been designed and constructed to protect inhabitants from noise, odors, and thieves. That urban plan included the world's first urban sanitation systems. Within the city, individual homes or groups of homes obtained water from wells. Some of the houses included rooms that appear to have been set aside for bathing, wastewater diverted to covered drains which lined the major streets. Houses opened only to inner courtyards and smaller lanes. Most houses had inner courtyards. A variety of buildings stood up to 2 stories high. Being an agricultural city, it featured a large well and central marketplace. It had a building with an underground furnace, hypocaust, possibly for heated bathing, water supply and wells. The location of Mohenjo-Daro was built in a relatively short period of time, with the water supply system and wells being some of the first planned constructions. With the excavations done so far, over 700 wells are present at Mohenjo-Daro, alongside drainage and bathing systems. This number is unheard of when compared to other civilizations at the time, such as Egypt or Mesopotamia, and the quantity of wells transcribes as 1 well for every 3 houses. Because of the large number of wells, it is believed that the inhabitants relied solely on annual rainfall, as well as the Indus River's course remaining close to the site, alongside the wells providing water for long periods of time in the case of the city coming under siege. Due to the period in which these wells were built and used, it is likely that the circular brick well design used at this and many other Harappan sites are an invention that should be credited to the Indus civilization, as there is no existing evidence of this design from Mesopotamia or Egypt at this time, and even later. Sewage and wastewater for buildings at the site were disposed of via a centralized drainage system that ran alongside the site's streets. These drains that ran alongside the road were effective at allowing most human waste and sewage to be disposed of, as the drains most likely took the waste toward the Indus River. Flooding and rebuilding. The city also had large platforms perhaps intended as defense against flooding. For some archaeologists, it was believed that a final flood that helped engulf the city in a sea of mud brought about the abandonment of the site. Gregory Possehl was the first to theorize that the floods were caused by overuse and expansion upon the land, and that the mud flood was not the reason the site was abandoned. Instead of a mud flood wiping part of the city out in one fell swoop, Possehl coined the possibility of constant mini-floods throughout the year, paired with the land being worn out by crops, pastures, and resources for bricks and pottery spelled the downfall of the site. Defensively, Mohenjo-Daro constituted a well-fortified city. Lacking city walls, it did have towers to the west of the main settlement and defensive fortifications to the south. Considering those fortifications and the structure of other major Indus Valley cities like Harappa led to the question of whether Mohenjo-Daro served as an administrative center. Both Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro share relatively the same architectural layout, generally lightly fortified like other Indus Valley sites. Obviously, considering the identical city layouts of all Indus sites, they served in some kind of political or administrative capacity, although the extent and functioning of an administrative center remains unclear. Mohenjo-Daro had been successively destroyed and rebuilt at least 7 times. Each time, the new cities built directly on top of the old ones. Flooding by the Indus may have been the cause of destruction. Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, and their civilization vanished without trace from history until discovered in the 1920s. Although extensively excavated in the 1920s, in-depth excavations suspended in the 1960s. 2500 BCE flourishing trade and economy. Mohenjo-Daro thrived as a center of trade and commerce during this period. Archaeological evidence suggests that the city had extensive trade networks with other settlements in the Indus Valley region, as well as with regions as far away as Mesopotamia. The inhabitants of Mohenjo-Daro engaged in various economic activities such as agriculture, manufacturing, and crafts. The city's wealth and prosperity can be seen in the well-preserved artifacts and intricate craftsmanship found in excavations. Civilization, artifacts. Notable artifacts. Numerous objects found in excavation include seated and standing figures, copper and stone tools, carved seals, balance scales and weights, gold and jasper jewelry, and children's toys. Many bronze and copper pieces, such as figurines and bowls, have been recovered from the site, showing that the inhabitants of Mohenjo-Daro understood how to utilize the lost wax technique. The furnaces found at the site are believed to have been used for copperworks and melting the metals, as opposed to smelting. There even seems to be an entire section of the city dedicated to shell working, located in the northeastern part of the site. Some of the most prominent copperworks recovered from the site are the copper tablets, which have examples of the untranslated Indus script and iconography. While the script has not been deciphered yet, many of the images on the tablets match another tablet, and both hold the same caption in the Indus language, with the example given showing 3 tablets with the image of a mountain goat and the inscription on the back, reading the same letters for the 3 tablets. Mother Goddess idol discovered by John Marshall. In 1931, the idol appears to mimic certain characteristics that match the Mother Goddess belief common in many early Near East civilizations. Sculptures and figurines depicting women have been observed as part of Harappan culture and religion, as multiple female pieces were recovered from Marshall's archaeological digs. These figures were not categorized correctly, according to Marshall, meaning that where they were recovered from the site is not actually clear. One of said figures is 18.7 centimeter tall and is currently on display at the National Museum of Pakistan in Karachi. Dancing Girl. A bronze statuette dubbed the Dancing Girl, 10.5 centimeters, 4.1 in high, and about 4,500 years old, was found in HR area of Mohenjo-Daro in 1926. It is now in the National Museum, New Delhi. In 1973, British archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler described the item as his favorite statuette. She's about 15 years old, I should think, not more, but she stands there with bangles all the way up her arm and nothing else on. A girl perfectly, for the moment, perfectly confident of herself and the world. There's nothing like her, I think, in the world. Priest King. In 1927, a seated male soapstone figure was found in a building with unusually ornamental brickwork and a wall niche. Though there is no evidence that priests or monarchs ruled Mohenjo-Daro, archaeologists dubbed this dignified figure a priest king. The sculpture is 17.5 centimeters, 6.9 in, tall, and shows a neatly bearded man with pierced earlobes and a fillet around his head, possibly all that is left of a once elaborate hairstyle or headdress. His hair is combed back. Pashupati seal. A seal discovered at the site bears the image of a seated, cross-legged, and possibly ichthyophallic figure surrounded by animals. The figure has been interpreted by some scholars as a yogi, and by others as a 3-headed proto-Shiva, as lord of animals. 7-stranded necklace. Sir Mortimer Wheeler was especially fascinated with this artifact, which he believed to be at least 4,500 years old. The necklace has an S-shaped clasp with 7 strands, each over 4 ft long, of bronze metal bead-like nuggets which connect each arm of the S in filigree. Each strand has between 220 and 230 of the many-faceted nuggets, and there are about 1,600 nuggets in total. The necklace weighs about 250 grams in total and is presently held in a private collection in India. The Mohenjo-Daro ruler. The Indus Valley Civilization employed rulers made of ivory for measuring length circa 1500 BCE. The Mohenjo-Daro ruler is divided into units corresponding to 34 millimeters, 1.32 in, and these are further marked in decimal subdivisions with great accuracy to within 0.3 mm or 0.005 in. A ruler found at Lothal, 2400 BCE, is calibrated to about 1.6 mm, 1/16 in. The decimal subdivision on the ruler is noteworthy as it predates the modern metric system by 3,000 years or more. 2300 BCE decline and abandonment. Mohenjo-Daro began to decline during this period, possibly due to a combination of factors such as environmental changes, natural disasters, and internal conflicts. The city's infrastructure deteriorated, and evidence of fire and destruction can be seen in the ruins. By around 1900 BCE, Mohenjo-Daro was completely abandoned, and its once thriving civilization was lost to history. The reasons behind the decline and abandonment of Mohenjo-Daro continue to be a subject of debate among archaeologists and historians. Current UNESCO status. UNESCO designated Mohenjo-Daro a World Heritage Site. The most extensive recent work at the site has focused on attempts at conservation of the standing structures, undertaken by UNESCO in collaboration with the Department of Archaeology and Museums, as well as various foreign consultants. In December 1996, preservation work at the 500-acre site suspended after funding from the government and international organizations ran out, according to a resident archaeologist. In April 1997, the UN Educational, Scientific and Culture Organization, UNESCO, funded $10 million to a project to be conducted over 2 decades to protect the Mohenjo-Daro ruins from flooding. That project has been a success so far. UNESCO's efforts to save Mohenjo-Daro has been one of the key events that led the organization to establish World Heritage Sites.